Hi, I'm Cheryl with HARTT, Humane Animal Rescue and Trapping Team in Phoenix, Arizona. We are going to learn in this video how to set up and arm the Collarum trap. The Collarum comes with a number of parts. First of all, it's going to ship with these very, very long stakes that are going to actually be used to anchor the Collarum in the ground so it doesn't pull out. There are 2 of them that are included in the package, the ACO Special. You're going to actually have the Collarum itself. It does not come with this board. We'll talk about the board, but it's this whole metal contraption here. So we'll cover that in a moment. You're also going to get 2 of these cables and 1 of these anchors. And this anchor plate is what's going to hold the stakes in the ground. And you have an extra cable like this that's going to come in the package as well. The other thing you will likely want to buy is a long cable. This is going to be a secondary way to anchor the Collarum to a nearby tree or column or something like that as an added protection. This is just a 15-foot tie-out dog cable that I bought on Amazon. The other things you're going to need are really just an Allen wrench. And I can't remember what size this is, but it's super tiny. This is what you're going to use on this black stop right here to loosen it and tighten it based on the dog's anticipated neck size. We'll talk more about that later. And then you're going to want just a basic screw or something like this that's going to actually keep the Collarum from firing while you're setting it up. This just basically kind of sits into the Collarum itself as just a placeholder. It's not going to actually be screwed in. We'll talk more about that, and then we'll cover the board and the mounting next. The other 2 items that are not included that you'll want to pick up are these long stakes, and this is actually they're more like giant nails, not stakes. These are your stakes. And this is if you choose to mount your Collarum on an angle board like this, which I recommend. These are 11.5 inches long. And you'll need 2 of them. And then these are also very long nails, but these are only 7 inches, and you'll need 2 of these as well. By mounting your Collarum on a board, it's going to help you to set it up in the field. Most people that have mounted their boards have not done this angle board setup. I actually talked to somebody at the Collarum manufacturer, and they mounted theirs like this, so I copied them. So basically you're working with a piece of it's like common board, and it's 11 inches by 11 inches by about 5/8 or maybe close to 3/4 in thickness. It's just really a cheap board, so you're going to want to pick that up. Then you're going to want to pick up just another board. I'm sure you can devise a better setup than this, but this worked for me. This is about 11 inches wide, maybe a little bit longer. And this board is about 3 3/4 deep. And the thickness isn't really relevant, but this board, it does give it some sturdiness. So this is about 1 5/8 inch wide. And then I have 2 L brackets right here. As you can see, there's an L bracket here and an L bracket over here. And then I got a little metal plate. This will come in handy. This does not come with the Collarum. This little metal plate is 3 inches long, and it has 4 screw holes. And this keeps the Collarum mounting from digging into the board, which would make it unstable. And then in the back, I've got some long screws and wing nuts, and this holds the actual Collarum onto the board. There are also some lock washers right here in here to kind of keep it tightened. Even though you create a board for mounting the Collarum, you're actually not going to be able to actually set the Collarum while it's on the board. So this is really just to give stability in the field. So you're going to have your board with the back and the L brackets. You're going to have drilled holes. These are actually for the nails that are going to just basically keep it sturdy in the ground. And these 3 holes are actually to mount the Collarum unit itself, okay? But you have to take it off of the board to actually set the trap. This bracket is just so that the metal piece of the collarum doesn't dig into the wood. Before I did this, I had these gouges in the wood and it caused the whole collarum to be unlevel. And so this just protects that. And so the collarum is anchored to the board only by 3 particular holes, here, here, and here, that you're gonna drill. And then basically this contraption is gonna go up at the top. So above the board on the top, you're gonna have a long screw. I'll measure it for you. It's gonna have 1 washer, just a regular, hold on, let me set this down. You're gonna have a regular washer, okay? And that's gonna be above on the top. And then underneath the board, you're gonna have a regular washer, a locking washer, which is one of those offset ones that hyper tightens, and then a wing nut. And the board's gonna sit in between here, and there's actually gonna be a gap. And so this is gonna just sit in these 2. So you're gonna have 2 of these things. And then the bottom one, all that one is that holds the bottom of the collarum on, is this screw with a nut on the back side and a washer on the top side. Okay, so you have to take this whole thing off before you mount the, before you set the collarum. So the basic premise here, you're gonna have your bait here. This is the little trigger right here, okay? And the concept is you're gonna have your cable, we'll talk about that later, here, and you're gonna cock this back. I can't do it unless I'm putting my body weight on it. And you want this hole to catch with this little hook right here. When it goes all the way back and catches in that hole, that's what arms the trap. And then what we do is once it's armed, pretend it's armed, I just use like a screw, and I just kind of sit it in here so it doesn't like fling back at me while I'm trying to set it. To set the collarum, I'm gonna kneel in front of it. I'm gonna have my gloves on. I'm going to basically put my knee here, and I'm going to lean in by holding it like this. So I'm gonna put my knee, I'm actually just have this towel because that way it'll keep it from springing back at me a little bit. I'm gonna kneel. It's actually kind of difficult to kind of get this down, but I'm going to lean in. There. And it engaged. So before I breathe, I'm going to take this nut, I'm going to put it in this hole just to hold it and keep it from springing back. Okay? And so now your collarum is set with the pin in the hole to keep the collarum from just randomly firing. We're now going to actually insert the cinch spring. And the way we're going to do that is we are going to hold the collarum in one hand, like so, and we are going to pull the cinch spring back. It's actually quite hard, and hook it into this hole right here. And at this point, the collarum is ready to go, just has to be mounted on your board. This collarum is armed. The trigger is engaged right here. It's in the hole. This screw is just sitting here lightly, just to try to, in case I bump it the wrong way, I don't want to set off the trap. And the cinch spring is in place. It's in this notch right here. So this is actually armed, and if this pin were here, it would be able, if I tugged on this, to actually deploy the trap. But before we do that, we're going to want to mount it again on our board for stability. Here's what the collarum looks like as I've temporarily mounted it onto the board. It's still set. You have the cinch spring here, this long giant spring that's sticking out is in place, and it's in the notch. You have the U-shaped throw arms up. You have the trigger that is engaged in the hole with a little screw just holding it in place. And then you see the two screws that are mounting the collar to the board. This is what the back looks like. There's basically a washer, then a locking washer, and then a wing nut. The bottom, there's just a nut. And if I tilt it over, you'll see that there's a gap. You see that gap where the screws are basically exposed between the board and the collarum? I'm actually going to get some spacers for the future, but for right now I don't have any spacers. And then this one is mounted here. I have not tightened these down. The collarum is now mounted to the board, and it is a little scary working with it. But in reality, unless you pull up on this white piece, unless you pull up, it will not be triggered. Plus I have this safety stop in this hole just to keep it from triggering. I have accidentally triggered it before, and the only way it hurts is, quite frankly, is let's say your hand is in the way here and you accidentally pull up on the trigger and your arm is in the way of these throw arms. They can come back and actually cut your arm. As long as you're in the center, all it does is it throws them around your arm. And that's the premise of the dog pulling here, is the cable that we're going to add next will be thrown around the dog. So it's still a little unsettling to work with, but really as long as you don't pull up on this white thing, you should be fine. The cable just actually sits in these throw arms. There are little hooks right here on the sides. You just clip it in the hook right here and right here, okay? Right here, you're going to look at the curvature. I'm going to try to bring the camera closer so you can see. There's the curvature of this cable, sits in this notch, and it just follows the bend of the throw arm, goes around, and then this end of the cable actually barely passes over the one underneath. It goes under this hook, and then this all goes under your cinch spring, and these are what get anchored in the ground with these giant pins. You should probably watch the manufacturer video here, but this is going to be staked in this way on an angle, and the other one is going to be staked at an angle as well. These are very, very, very difficult to get out. I don't think a dog is going to be able to pull them out, and I had a dog go crazy in this, and this never came out. Your collarum is going to be mounted in the dirt using these nails. These are the two really large nails, and they're longer because they're in the upright part of the board, so they have to go further to get into the ground, and these are your short nails. These are going to be hammered with stakes into the ground so the whole thing doesn't move too much, okay? So I'm going to take these out for right now. Those are hammered into the ground, so I think you have the general idea. Hold on, put this out here. Okay, and then over here, you're going to pretend this is in the ground, and you're going to have the stakes that are mounted and drilled, basically hammered into the ground. And then as an added protection, you can take a cable, like a dog tie-out cable, and hook it to this little locking carabiner, like so, and just wrap the other end around a tree. So this is just my paranoia. In case this were ever to pull out, you'd have this around a tree as well. And it doesn't happen, but I like to be safe. It's imperative that you test this both at home so you're comfortable and in the field so that you don't have to be scared of it. The reality is, as long as your hand is centered, there's no way it's going to harm you. It's basically like throwing a slip lead over a dog's head. Now, this will jump a bit when I do this. I've removed the safety, the little extra screw that I had here, so that the trap is armed. All I have to do is tug. A dog does not have to tug very hard, and the cable will be thrown around the dog. It's going to look loose when I do it because I'm not going to be fighting like a dog, but here goes. Ready? Here goes. It always scares me, but here goes. And there you go. It's around my arm, and if I were a dog, as you can see, it would tighten up. And this is basically what the trap looks like when it's been deployed. The arms are in the reverse state. This is here. You must test this in the field, and you must test it ahead of time, and you don't have to be afraid of it. As long as your arm is in between here, it won't hurt you. If your arm is in the way, these little metal things are just really sharp, and I did cut my arm once, but nothing hurts, so don't be scared of it.